sketch here. Every one of these little blocks on here was 1 inch on each side. I've got my start, my finish up here. I've got my holes drawn, and we've got all of our walls. So the first step I'm going to do is start making these walls. I'm going to shrink this back down again. Maybe we'll leave it right about there. Okay. We're actually going to bring this over so I can see it while I work. Okay. Okay. All right, so first step we're going to do is we're going to start creating our sketch. So again, we're going to go up to create sketch. This time, instead of worrying about what plane we're going to do it on, the top, the right, the front, etc., we're actually going to sketch this right here on the base. So we're not going to worry about the square down here in the corner. We're just going to click right here in the base. And we do that because we want these walls to start at the top of the base, which is 1/8 of an inch up from, the plane the top plane. I'm going to shrink this sketch palette since I've got a little bit smaller screen to work with. I'm going to hide the bases and outer walls for now. So now I just got this view where I can see my original sketch. So now I'm going to start. I always recommend starting with one of the walls that connects to the exterior walls. So I'm going to start with this wall right here. It is 2 inches long and it starts about 2 inches down. So all of our walls are rectangles. So I'm going to click on the 2-point rectangle tool. Doesn't really matter how far down I start it, how big I make it, because we're going to change it as we go along. The one thing that is super critical here is the first click. I want it to change to this icon here, letting me know that it's joining the outer wall. And I want to make sure if I zoom in that it's the inside of the outer wall and not the outside line of the outer wall. So I'm going to go ahead and just click here. I'm going to draw a rectangle and go here. Before I make my second click, I'm going to change my dimensions. So the first one, where it currently says 0.382, that's the thickness of my wall. You can see the two lines, the top and the bottom. It's really pointing to how thick is my wall. All of our walls are 1/8 of an inch. So 1/8, hit tab, and now it's how long is my wall. In this case, if I look back at my picture, my wall is 2 blocks long, so it's 2 inches long. So I'm just going to type 2 and hit enter. Now if I zoom in, and I come up here over to the side, I can see that the edges of my wall, the smaller sides, are black. It is fully constrained. It is constrained on the two short walls on the outside. That's because I started one on the exterior wall, which it knows exactly where that's at because I did that on that green axis, started at the origin point. It knows that it's 1/8 of an inch long. And then it also knows that that other line on the inside over here is exactly 2 inches from here. So it also knows that it's 1/8 of an inch long, and it knows that it's 2 inches from here. So it's good there. But the top and the bottom are blue. So those are not yet constrained. It does not know, other than where I kind of freehand drew this, how far away this wall is from a line that is already constrained or that it knows exactly where it's at. So the way we change these from blue to black lines is to add our sketch dimensions. So I could press D, or I can go here into the create menu, go to the bottom, hit sketch dimension. My cursor will change to now having an arrow with that sketch dimension icon over at the lower right of it. It's the two vertical lines with the arrows pointing to it. And so here I need to click two different objects to dimension against each other. So I'm going to click on the interior portion of one of the parallel walls, one that is already constrained, so it was black to begin with. Once I clicked it, it turned blue. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on the top of this wall. At this point, once I've clicked it a second time, I brought my mouse up. Wherever I click on it, that's where it's going to drop a number. I want to make sure that this number is visible long term. So best practice is to kind of put it somewhere where you can see it. And at this point, I'm going to change the number here, and I'm going to make this a whole number. So I'm going to go with 2 inches. Kind of the easy way to do it. In reality, since my wall is 1/8 of an inch, I should be making this, to where the center of my wall is at 2 inches. So this one would really be at 2 minus 1/16 of an inch, so 1 and 15/16. A little bit complicated for our class, so we're just going to go ahead and call this 2. At this point, you can see all 4 walls have turned black. It is constrained at this point. My icon over here on my sketch has turned into a lock. So at this point, if I were to finish this sketch, my one wall would be fully constrained. But as you can see in my picture, I've got a lot more walls to do to finish this marble maze. So now I'm going to work on the second wall. I'm going to click on the rectangle tool. And at this point, I'm just going to trace this wall. So I'm here. I want to make a wall that goes up 1 inch from the corner. So my first left click is going to be on the corner of the wall I just created. I'm going to go up about 1 inch. I'm going to draw over a little bit. Okay, I'm actually pretty good there. So 1 inch exactly. Our thickness is 1/8 of an inch. So I typed, I hit tab to go between the boxes, and I hit enter. You'll notice that Fusion is auto-constraining some of these. So it knows these are vertical and horizontal lines. Same with here, based off of where I've clicked so far. I'm going to press D to pull up my dimension tool. And in this case, because I started on a fully constrained line, I told it was 1/8 of an inch thick, the wall, between here and here. And I told it from here to here was 1 inch. It's already fully constrained. I don't need to do anything at this point. So now I can go back to my rectangle tool, and I can start working on this long wall. So just like before, I'm going to start in the corner. I'm going to come over a little bit. I'm going to make it about 1/8 of an inch thick. And we'll start typing in numbers. So 1/8 of an inch. In this case, this one is 2 inches long. There we go. Hit enter. I'm going to press D to pull up my dimension tool. Make sure everything is, all 4 lines are black. Fully dimensioned, we are good to go. At this point, I have made that entire section of wall. So now I'm just going to go down a little bit, and I'm going to make this wall. So I'm going to press R to switch from the dimension tool to the rectangle tool. And I'm going to make a wall, again, clicking on that inside line for my outer walls. I know it's roughly 2 inches long, or not roughly, it is 2 inches long. And right now I'm using the center mouse wheel button. I'm clicking down and then dragging the screen or the cursor to move this around. Make my rough rectangle, type in 1/8 of an inch for thickness. We are at 2 inches. I'm going to hit enter. Now when I go to the dimension tool on this one, my walls are blue again because it doesn't know exactly where this one is. I've not constrained these up and down versus anything. So I can dimension top wall to top wall here. And since I know I've got 2 inch gaps between everything, I can make this 2 inches. And now I do still have one more wall, not completely fully constrained. So let's zoom in a little bit just to make this easier on myself. I'm gonna click on this blue wall. I'm gonna click on the interior here, and we're gonna go 2. Once I hit enter, all 4 of my walls are black. I'm good to go here. Now say at some point I messed up and I wanted to change the thickness of this. Say it should only, I decide I want to change this to 1 inch between the walls. All I have to do is double click on this number, change, and it will move. Now I am not able to move and copy it because it's constrained in place by this dimension. Only way I could move it up and down at this point, I would have to delete this. Again, just left click on it once to select it, press the delete button, and now if I go to move and copy, I can drag it up and down. So I'm going to bring it back just by doing the undo button. There we go. All right. I've walked you through a few of these walls. I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording, go through, sketch the rest of these walls, and then I'll be back to walk you through how to do the holes. Alright, so I've been plugging along on my walls, and I came across one that I want to call out and kind of show you something as far as using constraints. So in this case, I've got this wall here in my picture between the 4-inch mark, so it's between the 4 and the 5, and then if I come over here, I've got a line that should be parallel with it, or not parallel, but collinear on the same 4-inch line. And so that's top wall line is right here, and the other one is right here. So you can see right now they're not lined up. If I go into my dimension tools, this new rectangle I was just working on, it's not fully constrained, so I could go ahead and do the dimensions, but I can also do this another way. So I'm going to hit escape to get out of the dimension tool, and I'm going to come into the constraint section, and there's one that's called collinear right here. 2 or more objects share a same common line. So if I drew a straight line all the way across, that's where I want it. So I'm going to click on this line, the top of my wall that's on the far left. And since I'd already had this one selected, it already did it. So let's back it up one more time. So if I go to constraints, go collinear, click on the top of the one in the middle, the one on the outside, it automatically moved it up, and it constrained it on the outside walls because it knows exactly where that is vertically. So now they're parallel, or not parallel, but collinear with each other, even though they're far across the maze. So now I'm going to go through, I'm going to finish constraining it, but I just wanted to show you that constraint and how that works. Again, we'll talk more about constraints here in an upcoming project, but it's a quick and easy way to do it if you've got something that's on the same line, they're not necessarily connected, instead of having to worry about dimensions. Alright, so I've gone ahead, I've done my sketch, I've got all my walls, I've got all of my dimensions here. You can tell I'm fully constrained, I've got my red lock. If I click on, in my sketch palette over here to the side, I can clean this up a little bit, I can hide my dimensions, I can hide my constraints. You can see just the walls. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to click Finish Sketch. Let it do its thing for a second here. So now at the bottom, I've got my 3 sketches. I've got my 2 extrudes that I've walked you through. I'm going to rename Sketch 3. These are my inner walls. So right click on Sketch 3, type in inner walls. And now I'm going to extrude my inner walls. So if I hit extrude, you'll see in my profile, or my extrude pop-up, that's asking me the profiles. So now if I go through and I start clicking on each of the walls, try that again. Sometimes it helps to zoom in a little bit. And I just want to make sure that I'm clicking each of these little rectangles one at a time. It can be a pain. You want to make sure before you click that only the rectangle is highlighted. All right. And now if I zoom out, all my walls are selected. Depending on how many walls you have, you're going to have a lot of profiles here. Our distance, all of our walls are 1 inch tall, so we're going to change this to a 1 on the distance. I'm going to do this as a new body, and I'm going to hit OK. And so it created each one of these as their own wall or their own body, each individual solid object. If I hit the home button, and bring back my original base and outer body, you can see now I've got all of my walls, my shell. If I hit appearance, I can change this up a little bit. So let's say we'll go plastic and yellow. You know what? I'm a Sacramento Kings. We'll do FC Cincinnati today. We'll go plastic and blue. We're going to change this brown to a blue. Well, let me do an orange. No, we're just going to pick black. Drop this over here to maybe an orangish color. And then as I go through, I can drop it onto all the bodies. I can also use that select all that I've shown you before, selecting them all, and then dragging this over here, and they'll all change colors all at once. So now I've got a blue and orange-ish marble maze. Still need to do my holes. So now at this point, walk you through how to do a couple of the holes. Very similar to how we just did the walls. I'm going to create a new sketch. We're going to do it right on the base. And so the way you do a hole properly is you create a point everywhere in the center of each of these circles. So under create, there's one that says point. This one unfortunately doesn't have a keyboard shortcut, but we're just going to left click on it to select. And I'm going to kind of just drop them in where it looks like they should go. Put one there. Now I'm going to dimension it off of the top wall. So in this case, the center of this is at 1.5, so 1.5. Hit enter. And then I'm going to do the same thing to that wall. And here I'm at the 4.5 mark, so 4.5. So that's my first dot. I'm gonna go back to point. I've got one roughly here. I'm gonna go ahead and just drop in my dots roughly where I think they should go. I'm going to skip this one and this one because they're bigger size holes for now. So now I've got all of my points drawn. Now I'm going to hit D for dimensions. I'm going to dimension them up. This one's at 1.5 from the top. It is smack dab in the middle of the 2.5. This one here to here. We're at 3.5 inches over. We are in the middle of the fourth block, so that's 3.5 inches. This one is 1.5 to here. We are at 5.5. This one here. This one's on a line or on an intersection, so this one is right at 5 inches over. And we are at 7 inches down. Yep, because you'll see the middle of that is right with this wall, so that's perfect. This one's at 4.5. We're at 9.5. This one to the top is 3.5, correct. And so what I'm doing here is dimensioning, but it's more specifically, this is called baseline dimensioning. All that means is if you're used to sports, you know, the outside lines of a court are typically called the baseline. So I'm dimensioning everything to the outside or to the baselines. This one's at 11. This one is at 4. Almost done with these holes. That one's at 6.5. That one's at an intersection, so that is 9 down. And it is 11 inches over. There we go. Alright, so now I've got all my points for my main holes. I'm going to go ahead and finish the sketch. We're going to rename this. So I'm right clicking on sketch 4, hole points. And these are my 5/8 inch. So now we're going to go under create. We're going to select the hole tool. And if we look at our pop-up, it's saying, hey, what are we going to create holes from? Make my screen full again. And it says either face or sketch points. So I'm going to go through. I can do either at points or I can do from a sketch, so multiple holes. So if I do this, it should. It's not working for me today. So we're going to do the at point single hole. Or actually from the sketch, multiple holes. That's what I want. We're going to click each of the holes. Now you notice they're overlapping each other. I haven't changed the size of the hole that I'm making yet. So down here we've got our measurements. Imagine we've got our drill. I don't want just a simple hole. I want to make sure that I'm going all the way through. Actually, we're going to go simple hole. Simple tap. And doesn't really matter because I'm actually going to make this hole go all the way through. And so this is where this measurement really matters. And also I'm going to change the diameter, which is this one here. So in this case, my holes are 5/8 of an inch. I want to make sure that this is at least going through the entire. Our base is only 1/8 of an inch. So as long as I've got 1/8 of an inch, we're good. We'll make it 1/4 of an inch just to be safe. Not really worried about the angle of my drill bit at this point. If I was doing something with CNC, I definitely would want to make sure that these are all at 100% accurate. Now at this point I'll click OK. And you'll see now I've got my normal 5/8 of an inch hole drilled all the way through. If I go back to my sketch, wrong screen. I've got 2 more holes to do. So I'm going to sketch. I'm going to create, jumping ahead, sketching on the base. Now in this case, again, making my points. I've got one right about here. I've got another bigger one right about here. Dimension those out real quick from here to here. In this case, this one is in the middle, so I'm at 7.5. I'm also in the middle, so I'm 8.5 down. So dimension from here to here, 8.5. Last but not least, we'll do this one from the top to here. We're right at 0.5. 0.5 from here to here. We are at 10.5. 10.5. Alright, so we've got those 2 points sketched. We're going to rename sketch 5. Full points. And in this case, if I look at my key, 7/8 inch. Going to make that bigger. Going to create my holes. My hole tool is now up here. From the sketch, my 2 dots. I'm going to change this to 7/8. I'll leave it at 1/4 of an inch. And there we go. Now we've got bigger holes, 2 bigger holes, a bunch of smaller ones. We can see our marble's got a little bit of a path to go through. Goes through the majority of it. There are a couple of dead ends if you're not careful, a couple of tricky points. So the whole thing is being used, meets all the criteria, threw some color on there. So now if I wanted to, I could 3D print it. I can also just be done with the project and start to build my prototype out of cardboard, which is our next step once we've completed this. So thank you for watching the video. Feel free to rewatch if you get stuck. Also, come ask me any questions, drop me a comment. I will respond as soon as I see those. And as always, thanks for tuning in.